Welcome back to a mini-series in which we're creating a PDF using Amazon's CreateSpace service. And in the previous 3 parts, we've already done the setup and the interior file from the PDF. And in the last part, we've started creating our cover using Photoshop. And we've only got as far as the back side of the cover. Now we're going to deal with the front part of the cover. So thank you for sticking with me here. We're back in Photoshop. In fact, Photoshop CC 2017. This also works fine on older versions of Photoshop. So I'm using CC or CS5, which you don't have to subscribe to. It's kind of a nice deal. I don't really like that subscription model that Adobe have introduced there, but hey, it's one of those things. And let's have a look at the front cover. So we can, first of all, to clear this thing up a little bit, I can select both my back cover images here and drag them onto that folder icon down here, and then they'll go into a group, and it makes it easier to see to just combine layers together that just visually just disappear. So I'm going to call this one back cover here, and the color we can probably put underneath the front layer. That color may come in handy for here as well as for the spine, so we'll do that. To focus on the front cover, I'm just going to switch off the whole group of the back cover. I'm also going to switch off that fill color for the moment here, just so that I can see all the icons and markings that CreateSpace have given me as part of the template. Now I'm facing a similar issue with the front cover that I did on the back cover. The bottom here is probably easy to solve using that white background color here. In fact, that is fine, but the left and the right does not seem to be so easy. So I'm going to employ a similar technique that I had on the previous item here. I'm going to Alt drag or Command drag from that layer to the bottom. So I'm going to create myself a copy of that cover. And with the top layer switched off, I'm going to use my Move tool up here, and I'm going to stretch this part of the cover out to the very end here as well as here to that dotted line. That should be fine, or somewhere in the middle just before the dotted line. So anything that's red will be cut off. Those are the bleed markings. So anything that's white will definitely be there, but because trimming isn't an exact science, the actual trim is going to be somewhere in between where the white ends and the red ends at the dotted line. So that's the kind of tolerance that we need to provide here. So I guess I'm going to stretch this out to right at the dotted line, and we'll see how that looks. So that's the sides done. If I hit return first to lock that change in, and I'm going to add my front cover to it, then I can see that there's just a little bit of a line here. I can blend that in like I did previously, just as well as here. That's something that just needs to be blended in perhaps a little bit to make that look a little bit more handsome here. The tricky bit here is that I don't have a single colored front and back image. The trick here is that I have a gradient, and that makes it very difficult to do this all over the image. So at the top here, I have a similar issue with the fact that if I were to stretch this top part of the cover out to the top, I would cut off the number 64 here, which I don't want to do. But if I use the bottom part of the cover and stretch that out to the top, then look what happens. I'm going to see part of that number 64, and that's not really what I want to see either. So I'm going to have to find a different solution to that. You can spend as much or as little time on this as you want. First, it's basically important that we have something showing here, I guess. Let me just group those things together by selecting all these layers, dragging them down onto the folder icon, and that will be my front cover group. And with that, I can now also totally deselect that as much as the color fill. So the only other thing that we need to take care of now is in fact the spine and the barcode area. So let's do that quickly. The barcode, let me see if that on the back cover, that would obscure this area here. So if I just take the opacity down of the back cover, then we can see that would eat into the Commodore logo and this thing. So what we're going to do here is we're going to cut this bit out and give CreateSpace another opportunity to put the barcode. So perhaps, you know, centered on the back cover here. That would probably be a good idea. And all they really need for that is a white section, 2 inches by 1.2 inches in size, that we can select on here. And let's make that happen in Photoshop. That is fairly easy to do. We head over to File, New, and then we're going to define this as a size image. So in this case, we're going to just call it barcode. And instead of pixels, we're going to say inches. And our area wants to be 2 inches by 1.2 inches. It's kind of nice that they tell you the exact size here. So type that in. Resolution is 300 dpi, and we want it to be white. That is all we need to do. Hit create, and that'll create a new document inside Photoshop that is just white. And that's exactly what we want. Let's double click that. Instead of background, it should say barcode. And as soon as we do that, we can use our copy trick again. So right click on this section, hit duplicate layer, and then give it that main document you're working on. In my case, it's 6.9 cream _ 510.png. Catchy title. I should really rename that. And once we're done with that, you can either close it, leave it open, I don't mind. And that gives you the same area on a new layer that they've marked down here. So with your move tool selected, you either select this little cursor key here or press the letter V. This layer becomes selectable, and you can now see it is exactly the same size as this yellow thing here. So if we wanted to put that in somewhere nicer, perhaps here, that looks like it's pretty much in the middle of the cover. That's just where I'm going to place it. Hit return for good measure to lock that in, and make sure on the back cover we crank up the opacity again so that it's 100%. Oh yeah, let's select that white fill layer as well, so that we can see this is where the barcode would be. And I think that's a nice spot here. We can also make sure it's on the either left justified with the text or right justified with that text. Depends on what you fancy. Did they do anything on the original Commodore guides here? No, they just they didn't even print an ISBN on there. I think I like it off-centered rather than centered. I'm not sure if I'm a big fan of centered stuff. What do other people do? Yeah, they kind of put it off-center. Yeah, I think I'm a big fan of this. Here, Elizabeth George does it as well, so hey, that's good enough for us, isn't it? She does it left justified, so we're going to totally do that. And that's our back cover done. And look at the front cover. That's the front cover done. So all we need to do is create the spine. And the spine, the thing with the spine is it is a necessity. So it's not something that we can choose to do or not. And the spine also needs to have the author's name as well as the book title on it. That's very important. So this is not just for our benefit once it's in the bookshelf. It is actually a necessity that the book author and the title of the book is on here. Now, I'm not entirely sure because this doesn't really have an author as such. I've told it the author is Commodore Computers. So I guess I'm just going to use this as the author, and I'm going to place that here, rotate it, and I'm going to put the Commodore 64 programmer's reference on here. Now, I'm not entirely sure how I'm going to do that, if I'm going to use the blue here and then just type this out, or if I'm just going to grab this and provide that as a title. It's one of those things. It'll be difficult to grab this out without writing it out. It is fairly easy to create that gradient going through from here to there. I guess we could do that. We could probably utilize this area of the back cover and just stretch that out to the spine and just utilize that for the cover. I may do that, and then just utilize the Commodore Computers about here. For that, I'm going to go and open my back cover again, and perhaps just going to copy the bottom part here, and holding down Alt and just dragging it down to the bottom. Then I'm going to go and move that layer to the very top here. So great, now that I have that, let me just move that over here. Oops. to about here, I guess. That is cool. Let me stretch this out so we don't see any of the other stuff here. That's kind of okay. That'll cover the whole spine. I can see that, and I can even move it slightly further to the right so to obscure many other things. So yeah, I think that stretching is good. I'm gonna go and hover over one of those corners here, hold down the shift key, and then I'm gonna turn this thing to about 90 degrees, or to actually to exactly 90 degrees. And then I'm going to position it about here, and with the shift key selected I'm going to scale this up until I'm happy that the Commodore Computers logo is kind of the right size for what I'm trying to achieve here, something along the lines of that. So it doesn't have to be totally accurate, but this is basically the title that I want. So in order for that to be cropped and not show all the other stuff, I can of course do a mask again. I can also cleverly position the layer so that one layer hides the other, but I'm just going to go with a mask here, rectangular marquee tool, and I'm just going to grab that Commodore logo like so, and I'm going to go on to select and invert that selection again, and then with my trusty paint bucket tool again, also available with the letter G, I'm just cutting out that logo. So that's perfect. So spine, I'll call that Commodore. And now onto the title. So I think the easiest way to recreate this on the spine is to basically just type it out with a text layer. So it won't have that colorful Commodore logo, but it'll look a lot better if we just type that on the gradient here. So let's quickly do that. With the typing tool, with the text tool, we're going to go and select those colors to black and white, and we're just going to position that somewhere here, such as like this. Bring up the text properties here and pick a nice font. So perhaps Georgia is going to be good, and say Commodore 64, and then I think on another layer I'm going to put the programmer's reference. So if you find this font somewhere, then do let me know which one it is, then we can perhaps type this out in a much better way. This was of course the wrong color, so we want to write with white. So to rotate this text on the side, we're going to head over to Edit, Transform, and Rotate. And then this little thing comes up, and again with the shift key held down, we can rotate it to exactly 90 degrees. Now this is perhaps a little bit big here, I totally understand that. Hit return to lock those changes in. So perhaps a font type of perhaps 50 is much better. That's still a little bit large. Actually, let's scale it up so that it fills all that blue thing here, and then we can just print programmer's reference underneath it. How's that? And this Commodore logo, we're just going to shrink that down so it fits on the spine there correctly. Let's leave this. That's perfect. Let's just simply duplicate that layer and then move that down to about here, and then with the text tool selected, double click inside it, and we're just going to call it Programmer's, oh for God's sake, Reference Guide, which is of course way too big as well, but that's not an issue. We're just going to make sure we just select that number here. Perhaps 30 is a better way here. Programmer's Reference Guide. There. Let's get rid of the front cover and make sure that on this here we just reduce the opacity so that we can see both the blue thing as well as our text, so that we can adjust it properly. So it looks like the Commodore thing is still a little bit large, so we're going to make that perhaps 50. Yeah, that's much better, and then we can adjust it to about here, and then these two things together we can then position properly. Yeah, just justify that, and then with both these layers selected, make sure they're very much in the middle of this thing. Between those, I'm just looking at those dotted lines here now. So we can do that, and while we're here, let's make sure that spine is adjusted properly. I make that a little bit smaller so that the white just fits onto the white thing. Yeah, we've got some artifacts here at the top, but I think this is going to do as a cover. So let's save this as C64 cover, and the CreateSpace people, they want a PDF of this, so we don't want to give it to them in the Photoshop PSD format, because that of course contains our layers. To save this whole masterpiece as a PDF, we head over to File, Save As, and then at the bottom here under Format we can choose Photoshop PDF, and I'm going to call it CS so I remember where that is. In fact, I'm going to save it on my desktop. We come up with a few options here. High print quality is actually a good idea. I don't want this to be downsampled at all. No conversions. Everything is fine except for compression. I don't want this to be downsampled into something smaller. So save PDF. Yes. This will take a second, and then we can go back into the CreateSpace cover creator, head over to the browse button, and then see if that's going to be okay. I think the cover isn't allowed to be bigger than 40 megabytes. So if you have something larger, then you're going to make sure it kind of fits in there. But it should work fine as long as your document isn't too big in size. So just something to be aware of. And once CreateSpace is happy, we can go over and hit the continue button. And we're nearly there under complete the setup. So this is now kind of a crucial step in the whole chain of events here. We need to submit the files for review. And what happens then is that the people from CreateSpace, physically a human being, is going to have to look through all this, and if that's all fine with them, they'll approve it for printing, and if not, then they're going to get back to you with certain changes that you may have to make. So those reasons could include something is cut off on the cover, in the middle, the cover is too big, too small, it doesn't meet their requirements, there's no space for the barcode on the back here, the what's it called, the ISBN number, the ISBN or the ISB number, whatever you want to call it. So they may get back to you with those suggestions, and then they're going to ask you to either resubmit the cover or resubmit the interior. But this process, if we hit submit files for review, this is going to take up to 24 hours, so 1 to 2 business days. And that's one of those things. It'll say that here, files are checked within 24 hours to ensure your setup information is correct and your files are printable. You'll be emailed the result once your review is complete. And it is at that point that you have to approve the thing that they've made. So you can do that either digitally, or you can order a print copy of that which says proof at the back. Or when you do it digitally, you just basically approve it right away, and then you can start ordering copies. Now there's a few more steps to this whole big puzzle, so it's not as easy as clicking a button and then just going and uploading it. The next step that they're automatically putting you through it is the distribute button, the distribute box rather, in which they've already pre-selected Amazon.com and Amazon Europe, and these arrows here are actually buttons that you can click. So if you don't want your book to be distributed, you can unselect these things. Or if you do want them distributed, then by all means select them, and while you're doing that, why not also use the expanded distribution and select those as well. So in my case, I don't want any of that to be showing up on Amazon, because I just get into legal trouble, so I don't want to do that. You can also hit save and continue to give it price and so forth if you do want to distribute it, but again, I really don't want to do that. So rather than wait 24 hours and tell you what happens then, I'm going to go back to my member dashboard, and I'm going to show you a book that they have recently approved, which was this morning actually, which is the +4 program as reference. So it's a very similar process of what happened, and you can see all these green tick boxes are now ticked. The proof of my book has been it has all been approved, and the cover and the interior was made exactly like I've just shown you in this mini series. Once they get back to you, you get into this screen, and they will offer you to have a look at your digital proof. And if you open that, that's much like what we've seen before, but now it includes the cover. So it's very interesting to see the whole book, how it would look like. So again, this is a different PDF now, but the principle was exactly the same. The size was the same. And once this thing is loaded, we can get started. So this was the previous cover I've designed. And now you can look through the whole thing and see how you like it. So this looks exactly like the previous proof, but now it's a printable format, including the cover. And the best thing is you can head over here to this little button, which is a 3D view. And if you do that, then you see your whole book in its 3D version. That's very exciting to have a look at what your book's going to look like, get an impression of how thick it's going to be, what the spine is going to look like, and how your placement is going to be. And it's very exciting to see that. So this is now in the post for me, and it cost me about, I don't know, $6 plus $3 for shipping, and it was about a 450 page book. Shame I can't make that available. But again, once CreateSpace are going to come back, then our C64 Programmer's Guide should look exactly the same. So that was it for today. Sorry about the lengthy explanations here, but I thought, while I'm doing this, I might as well let you guys have a peek at it and let you be part of more or less every step of the way of how to get a shady PDF printed at Amazon's CreateSpace. I hope you liked the video and the series. If you did, then please share it with friends, family, and total strangers. And don't forget to subscribe to my channel. I will see you next time. Take care. Happy printing.